This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.
Hey, you ever heard that phrase, with great power comes great responsibility? Yeah, my first sort of experience as being someone's dating and relationship coach was an unmitigated disaster. And I want to tell you about it because I think there's some very valuable lessons to be learned here. And also, it will explain why, if you follow me, there are certain types of content that I don't post about. So, welcome to Confidently Cherished. If this is your first time listening to me, a double welcome. And my name is Keshia Rice. I am a dating coach and hypnotherapist. I help women heal from unhealthy generational patterns and then use that healing to go out and attract healthy, happy, harmonious relationships. And long before I became a dating coach officially, I was giving lots of dating and relationship advice. So one thing that you need to know about me is that I am a PK, right? I'm a preacher's kid. And when I was younger, I always felt like the church came first. I always felt like my dad gave more attention to the church than he did to everything else. And don't get me wrong, because I'm not at all saying that my dad was a bad parent. He was around for a lot of my stuff. Frankly, I grew up spoiled. I got everything I needed, definitely, but even most of what I wanted. So I'm not saying that he was terrible, but at the same time, again, I felt like the church still got more attention despite all the attention that I was getting, right? So because of that, I started dating at a very young age. I don't know what nowadays would be considered an appropriate age to date, but I would say I started dating around 14, 15. And because I was seeking attention, I didn't always make the best choices when it came to who I dated. And despite that, even now, I work with women of all faiths, all belief systems. One of the many things I studied in college was religious studies. So, I'm very much familiar with working with women who are spiritual or who are Wiccan or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim. I can work with them and accommodate and understand their faith and how their faith affects their relationships and their dating. But I do have a special heart for working with women who, either grew up Christian and are still Christian, or women who grew up Christian and are deconstructing their faith. And the reason why is because, when I was younger, my parents canceled and gave advice to other couples. And also, when I started dating, in high school, it was always interesting to me because, I had women in my church who would call me Jezebel and other names that weren't quite as nice as Jezebel. But then at the same time, I was, 15, 16 years old, and there were women in the church who were in their 30s and 40s who were coming to me for dating advice because they had not yet gotten married. Some of them, again, were in their 30s and 40s and hadn't been on like more than a date or two, or even hadn't really gone out on dates at all. So they were coming to me for advice. And when I did finally become a dating coach officially, that was one of the things that I definitely wanted to tackle. That was a group of women that I definitely wanted to work with, women who were never given any guidance on dating and relationships. So they were expected, to go to school, finish school, then immediately get married and have babies. And they always thought that this would naturally happen to them, even though they were never really taught anything other than just wait until marriage. They were never taught anything about communication and knowing what you want and setting boundaries and having standards. So then again, they get to this point where they're in their 30s or they're in their 40s and they still want that life. They still want the marriage. They still want the family. But now they are older and really out of the loop, and they really don't know how to get into that position to find the right person. So again, this is why I always had a special heart for, women who grew up in very conservative backgrounds, whether it's Christian or another religion, but then they get into the modern world and they don't know what to do. Right? So back to my first, I say this is my first unofficial coaching experience, but I really just told you what my first was, my high school days, giving women advice. But I got to college and there was a situation. So the human mind has always been a passion of mine, right? I took a psychology class when I was in high school and immediately fell in love. I was just fascinated by all of these things that you could learn about how the mind works and why we behave the way that we behave. And I also found it very interesting because, my first career was as a journalist working in TV news. So understanding how the mind works and understanding how people get information and process information is very important when you're trying to write news stories and communicate to people, right? So again, I was very fascinated by the mind, still am. That is why, in addition to being certified as a coach, I'm also certified as a hypnotherapist, and I will go into that more in another episode. But because of this, I would tell people every little thing that I learned. If I learned something about attachment styles, for example, I had to share it. If I learned something about how to improve your communication, I had to share it. And if I learned things about how to make someone like you and be more attracted to you, I had to share it, right? And that led me to becoming friends with this girl who, she walked so the city girls could run. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to use her real name in this episode, and I really should have thought of what I was going to call her before I started recording this. We're going to call her Joanne, right? Because if you've ever seen the memes for Joanne the Scammer, I think it's very appropriate for this woman. So Joanne and I did not have a lot in common, actually, but somehow we became friends, and we started hanging out and talking. And again, I'm a nerd. So I started sharing with her all of the stuff that I was learning about psychology, because I took a couple of psychology classes while I was in college, but also I just got into it for fun. So, I was ordering textbooks that were outside of my class, right? I was going online and studying stuff. I was checking out books from the library. At this point, between college and free time after college and then becoming a coach, I've probably read, I don't know, maybe 200 books on how the human mind works. So I'm a nerd like that. And I started telling her all of these things that I was learning. And I really shouldn't have. Because she started pressing me for more information, especially when it came to how to manipulate someone, right? And, it seemed innocent enough, right? So she would ask me questions about how to get a man to like her. And remember, this was the advice, or I was giving advice about that topic when I was in high school. Remember, I was 15, 16, and these women who were twice my age were asking me, how was it that in high school I was going on so many dates, and what did they need to do to get that type of attention? And I would answer based on my own personal experience, but also, again, even in high school, I was reading texts about psychology. So, I would say, hey, like there's this study and there's that study that suggests if you do this or talk about that, then you will attract more attention. So Joanne started asking me all these questions. And at first, I was so happy because she would always come back to me and she'd say, hey, Keshia, that thing you told me to like make eye contact like this or to start a conversation like that totally worked. This guy asked me out. We're going out tomorrow night. And I'd be like, oh, that is so awesome. Until she, again, I was going to say until she became the queen of scammers. And I want to say she was probably good at scamming before I met her, but obviously I wouldn't have known anything about it. And she started going from just telling me about dates to like how she got this guy to spend, a large amount of money on her and then she dumped him. Or she got guys to do all these crazy things and then she would break up with them. At one point, she convinced a guy to tattoo her name. And as soon as he was done, like as soon as the tattoo artist was done giving this guy the tattoo, she told him that she didn't see things working out between the two of them. So, it may have been around the tattoo story. This was a few years ago, so I can't remember the tattoo story was the final straw for me or if it was a couple of other things that she did. But eventually she started telling me all of these things, and I realized that she never really wanted a relationship. She wanted an ego trip. She wanted to be able to go around and brag about how she made guys do stupid stuff, and that made her a prize by default, right? And I couldn't deal with it. So I stopped being friends with her. And as far as where Joanne is right now, I don't know. I do know that we had mutual friends the rest of the time that I was in college and for a year or two after that. So I know she continued to scam men, and be a witch with a capital B. I know she continued on that behavior for a few years after our friendship. But after a while, I lost touch with her. So I imagine she's probably, it wouldn't surprise me if she was still doing the same things, but maybe she's reformed. And I say that, I've been talking for 14 minutes now. I'm telling you all of that because of this. The same situation that was created unintentionally by me in college is the same situation that I am seeing all over social media now. Whenever I tell people that I'm a dating coach, the questions that I get in my DMs or people ask me in person are usually something along the lines of, how do I get a man to blank? How do I get a man to like me? How do I get a man to ask me on a date? How do I get a man to commit to me? And more increasingly, because there's so many podcasts and YouTube channels and TikTok accounts dedicated to hypergamy, there's often a question of, how do I get a man to spend money on me? And I don't necessarily have a problem with that content. I've actually thought of doing more content about those types of things. Now, because I know that that can be easily abused, see, Joanne, because I know that can be easily abused. If I did that type of content, it would be behind some sort of paywall. So I currently do have a subscription on Instagram, and right now there are only 1 or 2 videos on there for subscribers only, but that's about to change. And, you know, I've also considered things like Patreon, and I do tell certain things to my private one-on-one clients. So, you know, I've thought about a monthly membership, things like that, where the barrier to entry is a little bit higher, where I think, honestly, women are a little bit less likely to scam, and are more interested in doing self-improvement work because they're paying for it. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the content itself. I have a problem with what the availability of this content has breeded, because it is one thing to ask about psychology and, you know, doing things that help someone become more attracted to you. I think that those types of tips can be a confidence boost, right? You know, I think if you know that you will appear more attractive when you go out because you're wearing certain colors, or if you make some slight changes to the tone of your voice or the speed of your voice, that there are certain things you can do to make yourself more attractive in that manner. I think those are great, again, because they can enhance your confidence. However, those types of things need to come with good intentions, not scamming people. And they need to come after you do the real work. So if you follow me on any social media account, so if you follow me on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, you will see, oh, and by the way, shameless plug, I'm at Keshia Rice, KeshiaRice. But you'll see that in my content on those channels, you would have to search, like seriously search, to find one video that references how to get a man. Most of my content is feminine energy, masculine energy, how to break these patterns, how to use your discernment, how to heal from relationship anxiety. And that's very intentional, because if you want a healthy relationship with a partner, if you are looking to get married, then all relationships are related. So it's going to start with the relationship that you have with yourself. You have to improve your own self-esteem, your own self-love. That has to be healed and fixed first, right? And then after you have a certain amount of self-esteem and love for yourself and confidence in yourself, the next step is really learning how to identify the unhealthy patterns that you've had in your life. So the negative relationship influences, the negative experiences, healing from those, so that you don't bleed over people who never cut you, so that you don't take your triggers and put them out on other people. Now, after you do that, you have to get really clear on what it is that you want in a relationship. What are the things, what are the qualities, the characteristics that would help you thrive in a relationship with someone? When you look at what you have to offer, what you can give in a relationship, what type of man would be a good match for that? When you look at the things that you need to receive from a partner, what type of man would be able to give you those things? And then when you've identified that, then you have to set your boundaries. You have to set your standards. You have to know your deal breakers. What things are you willing to put up with in a relationship, and what things are you not willing to put up with in a relationship? You have to be okay with enforcing those and understanding that some people will walk away from you because they can't or won't do the things that you need. And that's perfectly okay. It's just drawing you closer to the person who's meant for you. You have to have the communication skills to be able to express clearly what your wants and your needs are, and not be afraid to express those things. And after you have done all of this work, then strategy comes to mind. So after you've done all of that, then we can talk about what places to go in order to meet better men. This is something I honestly hate seeing on TikTok. There's so many TikTok videos that are dedicated to where can you go to find quote unquote high value men. And usually when they say high value men on that app, they mean wealthy men. They don't necessarily mean high value. And this is something that y'all need to get your head around. I can tell you from personal experience, because before I met my husband, I dated men who made anywhere from minimum wage to men who were low 7-figure earners. So they made, a couple million, like less than 5 million. We'll go with that. And so I can tell you from personal experience that there are plenty of rich men out there, rich as in they are high earning, but they are low value because they are abusive or they're jerks, or they make a lot of money, but they also have nothing to show for it because they have bad spending habits. And this is not to bash wealthy men. I've also dated some who are very good with money and manage money well and are also kind, considerate people, right? But just because someone has a few extra zeros on their paycheck does not make them a good person or a good partner. And I think you should be very clear about that when you enter the dating scene. So, all of this advice about finding high value men when you don't know what high value truly means is a problem. And all of this advice about going places where you will find these men, look, you can go those places all you want to, but if you aren't the type of woman who knows how to capture someone's attention, then it doesn't matter. And you can capture their attention, but if you don't know how to hold someone's attention, then it doesn't matter. And you can know how to hold someone's attention, but if you aren't the type of woman who is really clear on whether or not this relationship is going to help you in any kind of way, whether or not this relationship is suited for you, whether or not this person is aligned with your boundaries and standards, then it doesn't matter, because the end result is still going to be you unhappy. Whether they end the relationship because, again, you know how to catch them, but you don't know how to hold attention, or whether you end the relationship because you managed to snag someone who has money, but they treat you like dirt. Like, again, the end result is always going to be you're not happy. So the whole thing of strategy, going certain places to meet someone, or learning those attraction tips. So doing this makes you look more attractive. Doing this will, pique a man's interest more. That stuff is useless without the inner work first. Once you are right within yourself, you will naturally be more attractive to start. But also, you won't waste your time learning 10 tricks to make a man interested just so that you can go and be in terrible relationships. Like, who wants that? You have got to get yourself to a place where you're able to not just go out and meet new people and network and all of that, but you're able to attract relationships that are healthy, that allow you to fully express yourself and be yourself, that allow you to truly be at peace, to find contentment, to find happiness. Not relationships that you can just brag about and post a couple of pictures on Instagram, and at the end of the day, it's a hollow victory. So, no, I will never teach you how to be a scammer. I will also not encourage hoe tactics, scammer tactics, and I won't even encourage the more innocent stuff on how to attract. There's a place for that. Again, with my one-on-one clients, I do teach them that stuff. I will be teaching that in group workshops and things like that. And again, I will add some content behind a paywall. But there's a reason why I feel that way. And a reason why, if you want to hear me talk about that stuff, you will somehow have to invest and pay for it. Because it's the stuff that comes at the end, right? There's so much other foundational stuff that is more important and that is more vital for you as a woman to learn before we get to any of that. And I want you to have what is best for you. And I keep saying getting a man, I do understand that there are people in my audience who are not cisgender, straight female, but that is the majority of my audience. So that is why I'm speaking in the way that I am. But getting a man is not hard. It really is not. Anyone can get a man. But what you should be after is a sustainable, healthy relationship. What you should be after is peace. What you should be after is real, reciprocal love. And if you want those things, I would encourage you, if you want deep love, to actually go deep. I would encourage you to really focus on the foundational stuff within yourself first. There will be plenty of time to learn some psychological tricks. And again, I will add those to my content more, but definitely not to my free content. But you deserve so much more than a life of being a scammer. You deserve so much more than a life of being a peasant, tricking men into sending you $100 on Cash App. Why would you be happy with that when you could be in a relationship with someone who actually provides for you, and who provides for you not just financially, but also provides for you mentally and emotionally? Why would you settle for having to go out every weekend and shake your ass for free drinks? Like, who wants that? I love you so much. And I hope you love yourself enough to understand the truth behind what I'm saying and to really get it. I'll talk to you soon, though. Bye. Hey there. So you made it all the way to the end of the episode, which means I have two things to say. One, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And two, you like me. You really like me. So I would appreciate it if you would show that like by subscribing to this podcast so that more people can hear about it and enjoy it as much as you do. And If you want to know more about any of the links that I mentioned on this episode or any guests that I've had, be sure to go to KeshiaRice.com/links. That's KeshiaRice.com/links. I can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode. So see you then.